Doctors have been telling you to take magnesium supplements for decades. You have spent money every month buying capsules, powders, and pills from the pharmacy. And yet the statistics have not moved. Nearly 90% of American adults are still magnesium deficient. The supplement industry is worth $3.5 billion and growing. Here is what they never told you. There is a plant so loaded with magnesium, it makes every supplement on the market look like a placebo. It has been growing in your backyard, in your garden bed, in the crack of your sidewalk, for as long as you can remember. You have pulled it out by the roots, sprayed it with poison, thrown it in the trash, and gone back inside to swallow a pill that does not work half as well. Ancient farmers grew wealthy, feeding entire civilizations with it. Modern science confirmed it outperforms quinoa, spinach, kale, and most commercial greens in nearly every mineral category. 3 separate civilizations on 3 different continents independently discovered its value thousands of years apart, and the Western world classified it as a weed. Stay with this video because by the end you will understand exactly how one of the most nutritious plants in human history was deliberately pushed out of your awareness, and how to bring it back to your kitchen starting today. If this is the kind of information you want more of, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now because we are just getting started. Walk into a winter kitchen in northern India and you will see dark green leaves with a dusty white coating going into curries and flatbreads called parathas. It is not spinach. It is not kale. It is batwa. Over 300 million people across South Asia eat it every single week. In the Himalayan foothills of Nepal, farmers call it bathu and consider it essential winter nutrition. In Turkey, villagers call it ak sirkan and have gathered it from wild places for generations without number. In rural Mexico, traditional cooks call it quolite and fold it into tamales and stir it into soups. In Ethiopia, it is found in stews alongside injera. In rural Poland, grandmothers still prepare it as komosa biala. The same plant. 6 continents. Dozens of names. Hundreds of millions of people nourishing themselves with something that the Western food system erased without a single public announcement. Here is the first clue that something went wrong. You know spinach. You know kale. You know arugula, Swiss chard, and collard greens. These vegetables sit in every Western grocery store because at some point someone unified their names, funded their marketing, and placed them inside a food culture that millions of people trusted. This plant, consumed by more people globally than all those greens combined, does not exist in Western consciousness. Indians call it bahwa. Nepalese call it bathu. Turks call it ak sirkan. Mexicans call it quolite. British farmers once called it fat hen. American botanists call it Chenopodium album. Dozens of names. No unified identity in Western languages. When a plant has no consistent name, it has no consistent presence in cookbooks, in supermarket aisles, in research funding applications, in the cultural vocabulary that determines what millions of people consider food. The fragmentation was not the result of a single decision, but the outcome was total erasure. Compare this to cilantro. Cilantro and coriander are the same plant. One name for the leaves, another for the seeds. Western food culture unified those names. Restaurants adopted them. Food writers celebrated them. Grocery chains stocked them on every shelf. This ancient green never received that unification. It remained foreign in every separate encounter. Never familiar. Never integrated. Never understood by the culture that needed it most. To understand how deep this forgetting goes, we need to travel back. Not decades. Not centuries. Millennia. In 1950, workers cutting peat from a bog near the village of Talland in Denmark discovered something that would change archaeology forever. They found a human body so perfectly preserved that police were initially called, certain they had found a recent murder victim. The body belonged to a man who had died over 2,400 years ago. Scientists named him Talland Man. His face remained so intact that researchers could see his closed eyes, his furrowed brow, the stubble across his chin. He looked like he was sleeping, but what they found inside his stomach changed everything. In 2021, researchers from the Danish National Museum conducted the most detailed analysis ever performed on Talland Man's last meal. They used advanced microscopy and lipid analysis to identify every plant he had eaten in the hours before his death. Barley, pale persicaria, flax seeds, wild buckwheat, and one plant appeared in concentrations higher than any other grain or seed in his stomach. The plant we are discussing today, it was not a weed to him. It was food. Intentional, cultivated, harvested food. He was not alone. Grobble Man, another bog body discovered nearby, showed the same dietary pattern. Same plants. Same intentional cultivation. Same evidence of a food system that modern people have entirely forgotten. Across Iron Age bog bodies preserved in northern European peat, the leaves and seeds of this plant appear again and again. This was not foraging out of desperation. This was organized agriculture. 5,000 miles west, a completely separate civilization made the same discovery independently. In the river valleys of eastern North America, approximately 5,000 years ago, indigenous peoples began intentionally cultivating members of the goosefoot family. They selected for larger seeds. They developed storage methods. They built trade networks around the harvest. By 3,800 years before present, at least 5 domesticated seed-bearing plants formed a coherent agricultural system stretching from modern-day Missouri to Ohio. Archaeologists call this the Eastern Agricultural Complex. It predates the arrival of maize from Mexico by nearly 2,000 years. For millennia, Native American civilizations grew prosperous on crops that modern Americans now spray with herbicide. At Russell Cave in Alabama, archaeologists found seeds from the Chenopodium family stored intentionally and cultivated systematically. This was not a marginal food source. This was a dietary staple. 3 separate domestication events. The Andes Mountains of South America, the highlands of central Mexico, the woodlands of eastern North America. 3 independent civilizations studied this plant and reached the same conclusion across thousands of years and thousands of miles. This feeds our people. This is worth cultivating. This is worth protecting. And here is perhaps the most revealing connection of all. You have heard of quinoa, the ancient Andean superfood now sold for $8 per pound at health food stores. The grain that wellness culture adopted as a symbol of clean eating. Quinoa is Chenopodium quinoa. The plant we are discussing today is Chenopodium album. They are close relatives in the same genus with similar nutritional profiles. Researchers published a direct comparison in the Journal of Food Composition and Analysis. The results were not close. Chenopodium album demonstrated superior nutraceutical and amino acid profiles when compared against quinoa. The weed outperforms the superfood. The free plant beats the expensive one. And almost no one in the Western world has ever heard of it. The plant is called lamb's quarters. Chenopodium album. This is the most nutritious plant you were never told about. Modern science has now confirmed what ancient farmers knew instinctively. In a 100-gram serving of raw lamb's quarters leaves, your body receives 96% of your daily vitamin C requirement, 73% of your vitamin A, 37% of your riboflavin, 37% of your manganese, 31% of your calcium, and all of this at only 43 calories. Compare this to spinach, the green that nutritionists have celebrated for decades. Lamb's quarters contains approximately twice the vitamin B1, twice the vitamin B2, 3 times the vitamin C, and 3 times the calcium. Compare it to kale, the vegetable that launched 1,000 wellness brands and 100 juice companies. Lamb's quarters contains about 2.5 times more vitamin A than kale. Richer in protein, richer in fiber, richer in almost every mineral category that matters for human health. But the mineral that changes everything is magnesium. Research published through the United States Botanic Garden compared wild edible species against the commercial vegetables sitting in every grocery store. They tested lamb's quarters directly against lettuce, spinach, and cabbage across every major mineral. The results are not a minor difference. Lamb's quarters contains more than twice the potassium of those commercial greens, 3 times the calcium, and 5 times more magnesium. 5 times more magnesium than spinach. 5 times more than lettuce. 5 times more than cabbage. No capsule, no powder, no subscription delivery service. Just leaves growing in garden beds, in sidewalk cracks, and in disturbed soil across 6 continents. There is another reason this matters beyond the raw numbers. Many leafy greens contain high levels of oxalic acid. Oxalates bind to minerals like calcium and magnesium and carry them out of your body before absorption can occur. Spinach is particularly notorious for this. It looks nutritious on paper, but its oxalate content steals a meaningful portion of that value before your cells ever benefit. Research on Chenopodium species found a different result. Considering the ratio of oxalic acid to calcium and magnesium combined, lamb's quarters showed lower interference ratios than beet or spinach. Better bioavailability. More of what you eat actually reaches your cells. The supplement industry sells isolated magnesium compounds. Magnesium oxide, magnesium citrate, magnesium glycinate. Each has a different absorption rate. Each requires another purchase when the bottle runs empty. Plant-form magnesium arrives alongside cofactors, enzymes, fiber, and complementary nutrients that evolved together over millions of years. Your body recognizes food. It does not always recognize a compressed powder inside a capsule. Now consider the seed biology. This is where the story becomes economically inconvenient for several very large industries. Lamb's quarters produces an average of 72,000 seeds per plant. Some specimens produce over 100,000. Under ideal conditions, researchers have documented individual plants producing up to 500,000 seeds. A single well-established patch can release 50 million seeds per hectare in a single growing season. One plant in your backyard this summer will produce enough seeds to plant an entire neighborhood next spring. And you do not need to collect them. The plant disperses its own seeds. No intervention required. No storage. No replanting. But what transforms abundance into something permanent is the longevity of those seeds. Studies on seed viability found that lamb's quarters seeds remain alive in soil for 12 to 78 years. One study documented 32% germination rates after 20 years of burial. Another found viable seeds after 40 years in the ground. Your great-grandmother could have planted lamb's quarters once, done nothing else, and you could harvest from the seeds of her original planting today. The plant also grows in conditions that defeat almost every cultivated vegetable. Research published in PLOS 1 documented successful germination under drought conditions, high salinity, and poor soil quality. Maximum germination of 94% occurs at optimal temperatures. But the plant pushes through in light soil, heavy clay, acidic conditions, alkaline conditions, sandy desert margins, and waterlogged edges. From USDA hardiness zone 3 to zone 10. From Scandinavia to South Africa. From sea level to high mountain valleys. This is what resilience actually looks like. Now consider what this means for existing industries. Buy seed once. Plant once. Harvest forever. The global seed industry generates over $60 billion annually. Corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton. These crops require new seed purchases every planting season. Many modern varieties are hybrids that do not breed true. Some are patented. The entire business model depends on repetition. Lamb's quarters cannot participate in annual transactions. It cannot generate recurring revenue. It cannot be controlled. From an industry perspective, this plant is not just worthless. It is competition. The supplement industry faces the same problem. The global magnesium supplement market reached $3.5 billion in 2023. Projections show growth to nearly $7 billion by 2032. That growth depends on one condition: continued magnesium deficiency. Government statistics confirm that nearly 90% of American adults are not meeting the recommended dietary intake for magnesium. Some studies suggest that up to half the total population is clinically deficient. This deficiency creates demand. Demand creates markets. Markets require products. A plant that provides 5 times more magnesium than spinach, that grows without cultivation, that self-seeds indefinitely, that costs nothing after initial establishment, is not a product. It is a solution. And solutions do not scale into quarterly earnings reports. Search PubMed, the primary database of medical literature. Search for fish oil studies. Over 15,000 results. Search for magnesium supplement research. Thousands more. Now search for Chenopodium album nutritional research. A few hundred studies, most conducted in India, Nepal, or Pakistan. Almost none funded by Western institutions. Scientific papers repeatedly return to the same descriptor when discussing this plant. Neglected. The nutritional characteristics of the neglected species Chenopodium album. That word appears across decade after decade of research. Neglect is not conspiracy. No boardroom meetings were called to suppress lamb's quarters. No memos circulated demanding its removal from public awareness. The mechanism was simpler. Economic systems see what benefits economic systems. Research follows funding. Funding follows patents. Patents require control. Lamb's quarters cannot be controlled. It self-seeds. It spreads. It naturalizes. It becomes wild. It becomes free. What cannot be owned cannot be sold. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter consciousness. The weed classification completed the erasure. Agricultural Extension Services describe lamb's quarters as one of the more competitive weeds in row crop production. Studies document 13% yield loss in corn with just one lamb's quarters plant per foot and a half of row. 25% yield loss in soybeans. From the perspective of industrial monoculture, a plant that grows freely among other plants is a threat to uniform commodity production. Diversity is inefficiency. Spontaneous growth is chaos. The same traits that make lamb's quarters extraordinary as food make it intolerable for systems built on control. Herbicide manufacturers need enemies. Lamb's quarters became one. Billions of dollars of chemicals designed specifically to kill a plant that feeds people. The same pattern appeared with white clover. For 80 years, American lawn seed mixes included clover because it fertilizes soil naturally and reduces the need for chemical inputs. Then herbicide companies needed peacetime consumer markets. They removed clover from their seed mixes. They began selling poison to kill the very plant they had previously sold as beneficial. No single villain, just a system that monetizes problems rather than solutions. No one suppressed lamb's quarters through active conspiracy. The system simply forgot, or rather it remembered only what could be sold. But the plant does not care about monetization. It does not track stock prices. It does not attend board meetings. It has been waiting in soil seed banks across 6 continents, in disturbed ground near construction sites, in backyard gardens where no one has sprayed herbicide, in cracks of city sidewalks, in vacant lots, in the margins between what we cultivate and what we ignore. It has been waiting for someone to stop pulling it out and start cooking it instead. The health consequences of this forgetting extend far beyond simple nutrition. Magnesium deficiency has become one of the most widespread mineral deficiencies in the developed world. Your body uses magnesium for over 300 enzymatic reactions: muscle contraction, nerve transmission, blood sugar regulation, blood pressure control, protein synthesis, energy production at the cellular level. When magnesium runs low, everything suffers. Muscle cramps appear first, then fatigue that sleep does not resolve, then anxiety without obvious cause, irregular heartbeat, migraines, difficulty sleeping. These symptoms are so common in modern life that most people assume they are simply part of being alive. Doctors rarely test for magnesium deficiency directly. Standard blood tests measure serum magnesium, but only 1% of your body's total magnesium exists in the bloodstream. The remaining 99% lives in bones and soft tissues. You can be severely deficient while blood tests show completely normal levels. Modern agriculture has compounded this problem by stripping magnesium from agricultural soil. Industrial farming does not systematically replace trace minerals. Crops grow faster under chemical fertilization, but contain measurably less nutrition than they did 70 years ago. Studies comparing vegetables from 1950 against their modern equivalents show dramatic mineral declines across the board. The spinach your grandmother ate contained more magnesium than the spinach you buy in a plastic bag today. Depleted soil produces depleted food. Depleted food produces deficient bodies. Deficient bodies create demand for supplements. Supplements generate profits. Profits fund more research on supplements. The cycle reinforces itself at every turn. Lamb's quarters breaks this cycle because it grows precisely where other plants struggle. It thrives in marginal soil. Its deep taproot reaches mineral deposits that the shallow roots of commercial vegetables cannot access. It concentrates what remains in soil that industrial farming has partially exhausted. In urban environments, this becomes even more significant. City soils are often disturbed, compacted, and hostile to conventional agriculture. Lamb's quarters sees opportunity where other plants see obstacles. It colonizes construction sites. It emerges from gravel edges. It pushes through sidewalk cracks where organic matter has accumulated. Urban foragers across America have begun to rediscover this abundance. In Detroit, community gardens that embrace wild edibles report harvesting hundreds of pounds of lamb's quarters each season. In Los Angeles, immigrant communities from Mexico and Central America recognize Quolite immediately and wonder openly why their American neighbors are walking past it. In New York City, foraging tours now include lamb's quarters identification as a standard lesson. In Poland, traditional cooks still prepare komosa biała. In Germany, older generations remember it as Weißer. In Greece, rural villages maintain the preparation methods passed down through centuries under the name Vlita. The knowledge survived everywhere that industrial food culture did not achieve total dominance. History shows that lamb's quarters has served as survival food during humanity's darkest moments. During the Second World War, families across occupied Europe survived on plants that grew without cultivation. When supply lines collapsed and farms lay abandoned, lamb's quarters emerged from disturbed soil and fed the hungry. Survivors in the Netherlands during the hunger winter of 1944 and 1945 ate whatever grew wild. This plant grew wild everywhere. The same pattern appeared during the Great Depression in America. Rural families who held on to older knowledge foraged what others ignored. They stretched meager resources with free greens that required no purchase and no permission. The plant asked nothing in return except recognition. In China, historical records document lamb's quarters consumption during countless famines stretching back millennia. Ancient agricultural texts list it as a reliable food source when rice harvests failed. Peasant farmers knew that this green would appear when everything else had disappeared. This history carries a lesson we have chosen to forget. Resilience does not come from complexity. It comes from simplicity, from plants that do not need us, from food systems that function when everything else fails. Our ancestors maintained relationships with wild plants precisely because civilization sometimes collapses. We traded that resilience for the convenience of grocery stores and the comfort of plastic-wrapped vegetables shipped from the other side of the world. The pandemic revealed exactly how fragile those assumptions are. Shelves emptied within days. Supply chains buckled under a pressure they were never designed to withstand. The knowledge to begin reclaiming this abundance requires almost no expertise. Identification starts with the leaves. Look for the distinctive mealy white coating on young growth, as if someone lightly dusted flour across the surface. The leaves are triangular or diamond-shaped, roughly 3 to 7 centimeters long on mature plants. Edges have irregular teeth. Upper leaves appear waxy and water-repellent. The dusty coating washes off under running water. Beneath it, the leaves look like any cooking green, dark on the upper surface, sometimes carrying a slight purple tint underneath. Dense clusters of tiny green flowers appear on upright spikes as the plant matures into summer. Similar species exist. Orichae species are most commonly confused with lamb's quarters. But here is the important fact for anyone concerned about misidentification. Those species are also edible. The confusion poses no danger. You might harvest greens with a slightly different flavor. You will not be poisoned. Cultivation is almost unnecessary. The plant appears spontaneously in most gardens during the growing season. Stop pulling it out. That is the entire cultivation strategy. If you want to establish a patch deliberately, scatter seeds on disturbed soil in spring after the final frost and water occasionally until they establish. Then leave them alone. The plant manages everything after that. Harvest the young leaves when plants stand 6 to 8 inches tall. This is when tenderness is highest. You can harvest continuously throughout the growing season by taking the top growth. New leaves regenerate within days of cutting. Young shoots can be eaten raw, added to salads. The flavor is mild, slightly mineral, reminiscent of spinach, but less bitter. Mature leaves are best cooked. Treat them exactly as you would treat spinach. Sauté with garlic and olive oil. Add to soups. Fold into omelets. Blend into smoothies. The flower buds and young flowers are also edible when briefly cooked. For seed harvest, wait until late summer when the seed heads have turned dark and dry on the plant. Strip the clusters into a wide container. Winnow lightly by pouring seeds between 2 containers in a light breeze. The chaff blows away. The cleaned seeds can be toasted lightly and eaten whole, ground into flour for baking, or boiled into a porridge. One practical note. Like spinach and most leafy greens, lamb's quarters contains oxalates. For the majority of people, this presents no concern. But if you have a history of kidney stones or plan to consume very large quantities regularly, brief blanching reduces oxalate content significantly. Pour boiling water over the leaves, allow 2 minutes, then drain and discard the water. The oxalates leave with it. Store dried seeds in airtight containers away from moisture. They remain viable for years under these conditions. This is a form of food insurance that costs nothing and requires nothing beyond a jar and a dry shelf. Consider what genuine food security actually means. Grocery store shelves can empty within hours during a regional emergency. Supply chains cross oceans and depend on fuel, electricity, and political stability at every link. The average meal travels over 1,500 miles before reaching your plate. Every point along that journey is a potential failure. Now imagine a different model. Food that grows without replanting. Nutrition that requires no monthly purchase. Seeds that remain viable in soil for decades. Harvest that regenerates within days of cutting. This is not a hypothetical. This is lamb's quarters. This is what our ancestors understood before we forgot. The climate crisis makes this knowledge more urgent, not less. Droughts are intensifying across agricultural regions. Heat events are destroying conventional crops with increasing frequency. Water tables are dropping. Irrigation costs are rising. The industrial food system that replaced traditional knowledge is showing structural vulnerabilities. Lamb's quarters thrives under exactly the conditions that are breaking conventional agriculture. Heat tolerance, drought resistance, ability to extract nutrition from poor soil. This plant did not evolve for the stable, temperate, well-irrigated world of the 20th century. It evolved for the unpredictable world we are moving back toward. 3,000 years ago, a man in Denmark ate this plant in his final meal. His preserved body tells us what his people valued. 5,000 years ago, Native American farmers cultivated its relatives as dietary staples. Their seeds preserved in cave sediments tell us what they knew. This knowledge was never universally lost. Indian grandmothers still cook bat hua every winter. Himalayan villagers still gather bathu from wild slopes. Mexican cooks still fold quolite into traditional dishes. The wisdom survived everywhere that industrial marketing did not achieve total control over what people consider edible. The supplement industry will not tell you about this plant. There is no profit in directing you toward free nutrition. The seed industry will not promote it. There is no revenue model for a crop that perpetuates itself indefinitely. The agricultural establishment will not celebrate it. You cannot build a herbicide market around a plant you are encouraging people to eat. But the seeds have not been waiting for permission from any of these institutions. They have been sitting in your soil for decades, waiting for disturbance, waiting for light, waiting for someone to stop poisoning them and start harvesting them instead. If you want to keep learning about the plants, foods, and knowledge systems that modern industry buried, subscribe to this channel right now. We are documenting this information while the people who hold it are still alive to share it. The seeds have been waiting in the soil for 40 years. The question is whether you will be ready when they finally decide to grow.